Hello everyone, my name is Anna Davies. I'm a multi-systemic therapist and a specialist in stress and anxiety, working alongside the fabulous Action for Family Carers to help deliver some of their Feeling Good Caring Well programme. Some of you may have met me on the groups before. If you're watching and we've met, I'm sending you lots of really good wishes and hope you're safe and well. If we haven't met before, I'll tell you very briefly about me. I work in lots of different sectors, mainly specialising in stress and anxiety, decompression techniques and realistic things you can do to decompress when you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed or anxious. Really is my passion project, so it's my absolute pleasure to be doing some of these short videos for you today and hoping that they find you well and are supportive in these times of lockdown and uncertainty, when we're all kind of staying at home, we're a little bit more isolated and things are a little bit more difficult. So the first in the series of these videos, I'm going to be showing you a technique called belly breathing. Now, belly breathing is actually something called vagal tone breathing. The reason I'm really passionate about showing it to you is that it has some research behind it. It's used by the NHS across many different faculties for lots of different people with different illnesses, and it's also a really well practiced technique to help reduce stress and anxiety and the feeling of being overwhelmed. Now, before I show you the technique, I'm going to talk to you very, very briefly about what stress and anxiety or a feeling of overwhelmedness does to your body. Primarily, when you're feeling stressed or anxious or overwhelmed, then what tends to be happening is that your body is in fight or flight, which is something you've probably heard of before. Most people are familiar with the term fight or flight. Now, when we're in fight or flight, that basically means that our brain and our body are on high alert. They're trying to keep us safe, so they put us in survival mode. And we all go into high alert for different reasons. We all perceive different threats and different oppressive factors and scary factors and fear factors that can put us into fight or flight. Regardless of the individual trigger for you, your brain and body will go into flight. And essentially what this means is that you're flooded with cortisol. Now, cortisol is a really important neurochemical in our body. It regulates nearly every functionality that you have going on a day-to-day basis. It supports us in the way that we cognitively take in information and make sense of it. It is involved with our memory processing, our blood sugar level, our heart rate, our immune system, the pH levels in our skin, our water retention, our sight. You name a function, it has a big involvement in it. Now, what that means is there's a certain amount of cortisol that we have in our body that keeps us going, that keeps us thriving, that keeps us okay. But cortisol, you may know, is called the stress hormone. And that's because one of the biggest jobs that it does is when we go into survival mode or fight flight, our body gets flooded with cortisol to do all of the things that you might recognise for yourself as a stress or anxiety function in the body. So we need cortisol and adrenaline to pump our heart really quickly to get our blood flowing to the main muscles we need to fight or run. It will make us sweaty. It make us feel like we can't catch our breath and we're anxious and overwhelmed. It makes us feel a little bit disorientated. It's hard to multitask. It impacts how our brain and our body functions. So being flooded with cortisol is a really big deal. The other thing that it does is it means that our cortisol levels kind of go out of whack in all the other places that it would usually be functioning quite well. You might notice this for yourself with difficulty to sleep. We need a certain amount of cortisol in our body to sleep, in fact, a very small amount. When we're flooded with it, it means it's really difficult for us to switch off, to disengage and go to sleep. You might notice that you have a bit of a racing heart, or if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, you might find that your immune system is a bit low and that you've got a bit of a sniff or a cold or a cut that won't heal or something that won't go away. And you just feel altogether a little bit low. Cortisol has a massive effect on us, short-term and long-term. And the breathing technique I'm going to show you now is designed to counteract that. So before I tell you about that, I'm going to tell you why it's an important technique. When you're flooded with cortisol, which would be really, really normal now in this situation that we're in. When you're flooded with cortisol, it suppresses other chemicals that exist naturally within our body. So there's two really important chemicals that we really need to help us keep us ticking over okay in life. The first one is serotonin and the second one is dopamine. Serotonin is the chemical that makes us feel upbeat, able to access happy emotion, content and okay. It's what helps you recognise that the sky is blue and the sun is shining. It's a feeling of happiness. Dopamine is the feeling of being decompressed, relaxed, without tension. It's the feeling of a hot bath, clean sheets, a glass of wine on the sofa, whatever it is that you know is your shoulders dropping, calm breathing, decompressed feeling. It's the feeling of being relaxed. When you're flooded with cortisol, it suppresses dopamine and serotonin, which means, understandably, the more stressed you are, the less happy and relaxed you are. Now, as much as cortisol suppresses serotonin and dopamine, if you can boost your dopamine and serotonin levels, that can suppress cortisol, which means if we're able to boost our body, to flood our body with dopamine or serotonin, it's really likely that we're able to have a positive actual impact on the chemical structure in our body to lower cortisol, to decrease those feelings of being stressed or overwhelmed, which in turn has an impact on how emotionally we're able to cope. So being able to boost dopamine in your system is really, really important. And this breathing technique is designed to do exactly that. So what is the breathing technique? It's belly breathing or vagal tone breathing. It's really, really quick, super quick. It takes about a minute to do, if that. I really like it because you can use it all through the day whenever you like. No harm, no foul. You can do it as many or as little times as you like. Now, let me explain what belly breathing is to you. First, a little tiny bit of science so that you know why it is a technique that I'm recommending to you. In your body, you have something called the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's a collection of nerves and internal organs that are all interconnected in your body and with direct messages and connections with the brain. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is a really important part of our body. It is in charge of switching on something called rest and digest, and it switches rest and digest on for us automatically and unconsciously, so we don't make a decision to turn it on. It unconsciously does that for us. It's a part of our programming, our makeup and our DNA. Now, rest and digest is the feeling, hopefully you'll mostly recognise, just before you go to sleep, when you can sense that your body is decompressing. When we're in rest and digest, we start to digest our food and we start to prepare to rest. So our heart rate lowers, our blood sugar level decreases. We start to be able to process things that we've experienced, make sense of them, and kind of put them on the shelves where they need to go. We also flood our body with dopamine. So it's a really lovely state to be in. Now, when you're overwhelmed throughout the day, if you're feeling that you're rising to a little bit of a peak of feeling stressed or overwhelmed. It doesn't have to be a big peak, it can be a little peak. This technique is a really great thing to use. Now, I'm going to ask you to do a bit of an experiment while you're watching this to give you an example of how this breathing technique works and why we know it's an important thing for us to do. So I'm going to ask you to place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and sit up nice and straight. And all I'm going to do is ask you to take a couple of breaths in. So not deep breaths, not long breaths, don't change your breathing in any way. Just notice your breathing. So just nice, relaxed breathing. And as you're breathing nice and naturally and normally, I'm going to ask you to notice which hand moves the most. Now, if it's the hand on your chest, it's going to be just that subtle sweeping up and down movement. And if it's the hand on your belly, it's going to be that in and out. So just have a notice where you breathe the most. Now, most people are going to be chest, and that's called shallow breathing. And a huge amount of people, most human beings, will shallow breathe. If the hand that moves the most is your belly, that's great. Your head's and shoulders above the rest of us before we even start. But if it's not your belly, don't worry, because it's pretty normal for us to naturally shallow breathe from our chest. Now, belly breathing or vagal tone breathing involves activating your vagus nerve. Now, your vagus nerve starts and sits, a big part of it sits in your gut and run directly up to your brain. Now, your vagus nerve is in charge with carrying messages from your gut to your brain. It's also a huge part of switching on your rest and digest. And how we activate that vagus nerve is by massaging it internally with our gut and a breathing technique. Now, if you've ever seen babies sleep or cats and dogs sleep, you will have noticed that when they're breathing, they breathe really deeply with their tummies. And that's because babies, cats and dogs actually have some similarities around them. They are essentially spending most of their time resting and digesting. So what I mean by that is we are born naturally to do this breathing technique, to do rest and digest. We do it from when we're babies because we need to keep ourselves self-soothed, and we need to keep ourselves in a perpetual state of digesting our food and resting and conserving energy. Now, what that means is that we have muscle memory. This is a naturally inbuilt technique within us that we can access and can do. It just takes a little bit of practice. If when we did that little experiment with the breathing, you felt your belly moving, that means you've got real good muscle memory. So this is hopefully going to be an easy thing for you to do. If it was your chest, that's okay. This is a little bit of a practice. It's a bit of a technique, but once you've got it, you've got it. What I really like about this technique is it's not an if, but or maybe thing. This isn't something that only works for others and not for you. It's only about getting the technique right. If you can activate your vagus nerve, then you're able to consciously, whenever you like, switch on rest and digest. So what that means is you're able to scientifically, biologically, chemically counteract the effects of feeling stressed. It's going to help you decompress, it's going to help you feel more relaxed, and it's also going to enable your brain to function properly. So if you know when you're feeling stressed that one of your key giveaways is that you feel a bit muddled and it's difficult to multitask, this is a great technique to use. If you feel that you get overwhelmed or you get that anxious, panicky feeling in your chest, this is a great technique to use. Now, the way that we massage the vagus nerve, okay, is by the technique we use to breathe. When we massage the vagus nerve, it sends a message directly to the brain to switch on rest and digest. So that's what we're going to master now. I'm going to show you how to do it. We'll have a quick practice together. Then I'm going to tell you how to look out for signs that you've got the technique effectively and it's working for you. So, in order to massage the vagus nerve inside our gut, we need to do a certain technique of breathing. Now, this is a little bit like pat your head, rub your belly. You're going to have to think about it. So don't be disheartened if you don't get it straight away. It's a bit of practice. You're going to take a nice deep breath in. And as you breathe in, you're going to expand the tummy muscles, pushing them out as much as possible. Actively, consciously thinking and moving the belly out. The reason we do that is because we make room for the lungs to expand right down into the gut. The air goes right down into the base of our lungs and it starts to create a bit of pressure on the gut, which is the start of our massage on the vagus nerve. As we breathe out, we want to breathe out with a little bit of force, as if we're blowing out a candle. And as we breathe out, we want to squeeze and tighten the tummy muscles. Now, we're not just tensing them as if someone very attractive was walking by and we're trying to look slim. We're imagining that we're pulling our belly button back and up, so like we're trying to suck everything up. Now, you need to do this in a way that feels comfortable for you. You will know your muscular limits, okay? So the tighter the better, but in a way that feels comfortable for you. So we're breathing in and expanding the belly. So a nice way to think about it is breathe in and make room for the air. Then we're breathing out with a little bit of force, and we're going to use the contraction of the tummy muscles to force the air up and out. So breathe in, make room for the air. Breathe out, squeeze and force the air out. Now, 5 to 10 belly breaths is enough to switch on your rest and digest. If we've got the technique right, we'll activate that vagus nerve. You will know you've done it correctly if, after a short pause finishing your breaths, you either get the sensation of a small head rush. Now, just to caveat that with, it's not a head rush where you're going to pass out. It's just the feeling, of the release of the dopamine. Or you'll start to yawn, or you'll just get that sense that your shoulders are dropping and your muscular system is relaxing. Okay, really good sign that you've got lots of dopamine flooding around your body. So let's have a go. Sitting up nice and straight or standing, wherever you're watching this video, I'm going to talk you through this. So you're going to have to really listen to my voice and concentrate on what you're doing with the breath and the belly. So just take a nice breath to prepare, and then breathing in. Expand the belly. Pause at the top of the breath if you can, and then breathing out. Squeeze and contract the belly muscles up. And then breathing in. Push the belly out, and then breathing out. Squeeze and contract the belly muscles in and up. Remember, a little bit of force like you're blowing a candle. So breathing in. Push the tummy muscles out, make room for the air. Breathing out. Squeeze and contract. Do 2 more. Breathing in. Make room for the air, push the belly out. Breathing out. Squeeze and contract. 1 more, make this extra and elongated and deep breath. Breathing in. And breathing out. Right to the end of the breath. And then you're just going to pause for a minute. Consciously notice your body. Give yourself a moment. See if you get the yawn. I'm stifling one now. See if you can feel a sense of decompression. If you can't, it's the technique. Okay, if you can't, it's the technique. So hold on to the idea that you breathe in and push the belly out. You breathe out, has to be with a bit of force, and squeeze and tighten the belly muscles in. And that's belly breathing. You can use it as many times as you like, as often as you like. Remember, if you're feeling really heightened, do it a couple of times. Now, just as a little tip for you, the brain likes repetition. It likes to do what it knows. So when you try a new technique, you might be met with a little bit of resistance. It's really worth your conscious effort to persevere a little bit, to make this what it knows. So it's always quite tempting to give up when we try something new, but I would urge you not to. I would urge you to have a real good go with it. So good luck. I hope it's an effective tool for you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of our videos.